Hello and welcome to the Ori Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Jason Foster. Today with me, I've got Kevin Kyle and Carol Houts, the CEO and VP of Reg and Business Strategy at Germfree. Welcome, Carol and Kevin.
Hey, Jason, thank you very much for having us here today. Really great to be with you.
I'm very jealous that you guys are sitting in Florida today. It's freezing in London, so I'm hoping you have beautiful sunshine.
It's probably best we don't talk about the weather today, Jason.
Okay. Duly noted. Every time I talk to you, it's pretty much the same story, Kev. I'm still trying to realize why I don't live in Florida next to you guys. But anyway, here we go. Great to have you both on the spotlight, and really excited to hear about all the exciting things happening at Germfree. I know it's been a very busy couple of years for you. The pandemic has maybe changed the complexion of the market and the industry a little bit. We'll talk about that, and obviously the advancement of advanced therapies as a modality creates a big opportunity for your business as well. And as a partner of Ori's, I'd love to cover a little bit about the work we're doing together. So we'll have an action-packed hour, but hopefully we can start off just to learn a little bit more about each of you and how you got into your current roles. Maybe we'll go ladies first. Carol, if you don't mind, just telling us a little bit about your background and what you do at Germfree.
Started out in the laboratory, and from the lab, I actually went on to a regulatory role where, as most companies, great companies do, they become Pfizer at some point. So I worked for Pfizer for a number of years. Got the biotech bug while I was at Pfizer. Some of the early drugs that were coming out at that time were Gentropin and Fragnin and some others, which were kind of early on. And I got very excited about the technology. Ended up going to work for a couple of biotech companies where I led quality roles and compliance roles and ended up in clinical research of all places, working for the CRO industry. So ultimately, the beauty of that is I was able to really work through the entire product life cycle. So taking new products, biologics, small molecule, even med devices, combination products through to commercialization was very exciting for me. And then about 5 years ago, I met the owner of Germfree and really looked at the technology that he was building here at Germfree and really thought that the combination of the experience I've had in product development and dealing with innovation and challenges in the regulatory space, thought I could really kind of expand my wings here and really kind of work towards some really disruptive ideas and technology, which is kind of what we're about here at Germfree.
Very cool. And as the VP of Regulatory and Business Strategy, what are you mostly focused on currently?
Well, I would say I'm sort of the internal translator of what our customers need from both a business strategy perspective. So what's the business case, the user point of view? So how is the facility going to be used on a day-to-day basis? Is it a platform that's needed to access patients? How do we navigate that, whether there's some clinical aspects in mind? And then I really oversee the regulatory side of the business here at Germfree. And Kevin and I work very closely on road mapping a strategy for very disruptive innovation. So it's enough to keep me very busy and excited here.
Several full-time jobs. Yeah. Absolutely. That's great. Thanks, Carol. We're going to explore many of those things later on in this discussion. So, Kevin, would you mind doing a quick intro for yourself as well and how you got into your role at Germfree?
Yeah, Jason. Again, thanks for having us on the podcast today. Really great to be with you. We love working with the Ori team, as you well know. So good to be here with you. I'll actually go back as far as my the fact that I got to grow up on the Space Coast during the era of the space shuttle. And so innovation was kind of all around with that beautiful machine. And that really got me just generally interested in science, technology, engineering, etc. I ended up going off to school, like many do, and pursued mechanical engineering, and then joined a large multinational, the Gettinga Group, where I was able to do just a myriad of roles from service departments to project management to product development, R&D, innovation, up to running rather large global sales organizations. So had quite an interesting journey to land here. And like Carol, I had met our owner kind of 10 years ago, and it formed a really nice relationship working on a project with him with some of the products that we provided, and just loved the technology, the brand, the vision for where to take that, and have been really honored to be able to step in and help realize that vision. And glad to be with you guys on that journey.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a really interesting time to be having this conversation, because I think, as we just said, that the last couple years have been quite interesting and transformative for lots of the sort of parts of healthcare. But I think for your business in particular, some of the partnerships that you've developed around work having to do with COVID and other parts of the healthcare industry, but also in advanced therapies as this industry matures. Love to hear a little bit about kind of that last couple year journey and how it's sort of well positioned your business at this point, when we meet together today to serve the needs of particularly the cell and gene therapy industry moving forward.
Well, I'd say that interesting is an interesting word to describe the last couple of years.
Yes, indeed.
But Carol, you want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I'll start with saying that the work from home concept for Germfree really didn't exist during the
Hmm.
pandemic. We had some major installations to meet some really important cell therapy facility objectives and some capacity that was needed at the NIH. One of those
Hmm.
facilities, the TIL facilities, won a recent ENR award, which we're very proud of. So our
Congratulations.
team was very much in a client service mode, and ultimately, that was a big milestone stone for us. Also, we were really supporting the pandemic with facility capabilities for disease surveillance, for vaccine development, and all sorts of other things. And I think that work in combination, so the cell therapy facility work, the need to be able to really mobilize capacity that was desperately needed during the COVID time, really has just positioned us in a way to work more efficiently, more effectively, and
Hmm.
getting clients on board earlier with requirements, I think, is one thing that's just really going to help us strive for the future.
That's great. I mean, I think it'd be interesting maybe, obviously, if anyone's listened this far, they've sort of gotten a view of what it is you do, but it might be great, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind just giving the, sort of 30-second elevator pitch about what Germfree does, the kind of customers you work with, and, where your technology really differentiates in the market.
Yeah, so we for any of you who don't know us, we manufacture mobile and modular clean rooms, and some key differentiators for us come down to the fact that we also provide the BSCs, laminar flows, pass-throughs, everything that gives the client an ISO 5 grade B environment.
Hmm.
So we have a lot of vertical integration within the company, with the equipment line all the way to full scale facilities. That is a true differentiator for us. And I think what was fascinating to watch in the last 2 years and getting through this pandemic was to watch a team come together and work across those production lines, across the project management, the engineering, with a lot of demand. And one of the conversations we've been having internally a lot is just about being really kind to each other right now. People have been through a lot in the last couple of years, and so anybody who's listening, I would just encourage you to pat yourself on the back and be kind to others and encourage them to be kind to others, because it's been a challenging time. But from the cheap seat that I sit in, it's been fascinating to watch a team come together and really pull in a direction and really support each other in both business and in life. So really, I've got the best job in the world, Jason. We've got a great team.
You do have a great team, absolutely, and we've thoroughly enjoyed working with them. And it's interesting, it's something we talk about at Ori as well, is that we didn't exist really before COVID. I mean, we sort of existed, but the team in its current state, there were kind of three of us, I think, in 2019. So we're now 35. We've sort of been forged in fire of the last couple of years, and hopefully it's made us stronger. But you don't really fully appreciate the friction that it might introduce into the system and the kind of the challenges that maybe you're not overtly understanding that you're facing, but they're there in the background, trying to build a culture of a team that doesn't spend a lot of time face to face, for example, or, removing inefficiencies from a system where you've got people spread out all over the place. And there's some of the things that, yeah, as you said, Kevin, it's sort of, if you stop and realize what we've all been through together collectively over the last couple of years, you say, well, it's we're happy that we made it through the other side in one piece, and that, we're kind of moving forward. We got to set our expectations maybe a little bit lower.
But I think it does make you stronger. So again, I'm very very positive on the fact that we've all survived this together and come out the other end.
Well, I had the pleasure of doing a walkthrough. You guided me through a walkthrough of your latest innovation, which we saw in Miami at Facilitate. Would love to just have you very quickly just tell the listeners sort of what's the most recent thing you're working on and why you're so excited about this latest generation of technology.
So, for one thing, we'll start with the fact that Germfree has had a mobile platform for some time, about 8+ years. We've had a
Hmm.
platform that's been working in the healthcare segment of the space with which we serve, and meeting USP 797, 800 requirements, GMP, and so on. So we really took a look at the industry and looked at the needs around decentralized manufacturing for cell therapy in particular, and
Hmm.
seeing the fact that so many clinical sites are either struggling for capacity for manufacturing, or they're trying to partner with CDMOs, or they're working in conditions that may not be ideal from a GMP perspective. So we took a hard look at what we had designed for our mobile platform for the healthcare space, and we really put some innovation around it to actually make it much more user friendly from a cell and gene therapy perspective. We've designed it to have some grade B space, to actually have some features around remote monitoring and biodecontamination, some of the things that we think will be critically important for cell and gene therapy processing, either in a decentralized model, or where a young startup company may be waiting for space. They might be waiting
Hmm.
for a space to be built out that might be 24 months or what have you with the current labor market out there. And this gives them a good stopgap measure to at least get their PD runs, to get their early phase work done as they're continuing to try to move through their development pipeline.
Mm. And one of the things when we met each other 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now, that we saw as a great advantage is that sort of modularity that Kevin mentioned. It's the ability to have some capacity come online, but then be able to build that capacity up if you are successful in the clinic without having to scrap it and start over, or to completely tech transfer. We all know how much of a pain tech transfer can be in this industry. And we really saw this as a 1 + 1 = 3, or maybe even 4 kind of scenario, where the Ori technology being able to intensify the footprint, sort of shrink the space requirement, added with the modular capabilities and the mobile capabilities that Germfree brings to the table, really providing flexibility to not only therapy developers, which you highlighted, but also academic researchers, where again, there isn't a ton of space out there, but it also has the ability to potentially change locations if you want. You can have a setup in one place if it needs to move as you advance your clinical program or as you move to commercial manufacturing. You don't lose that investment if you need to change locations, which I think is another really unique and valuable USP for all those in the industry who aren't quite sure what manufacturing is going to need to look like in that 3 to 4 year time horizon when they're in their clinical phase, but kind of looking down the road of, well, what happens if we get approval? So I think your customers are probably after trying to capture some of that flexibility and even some the ability to not make huge investments necessarily up front that are fully at risk. We've seen lots of therapy developers, unfortunately, invest in bricks and mortar facilities only to never move in or never need that capacity and then have to find a way to offload it. And that's not a good outcome either for startups that don't have a huge amount of capital. But what are you seeing out there? Are you hearing some of these things from the marketplace, and what's been the reaction to your latest innovation?
I was just going to jump into the fact of the flexibility around the financial models as well. I mean, and Carol and I tend to geek out and really love the devices and the things that we build. But I think when you look at business and use cases, a lot of what our clients have been asking for is flexible models, leasing, the ability to use a facility, if there is a failure, if there's no further need, be able to return that. And one of the advantages that we have in our kind of 8 years of experience on standardized modular is understanding that lease model and understanding how to reuse and redeploy and commission, decommission, biodecon. There's a lot of services that have become associated with our business that have, I would say, have evolved in our time here, Jason. Where we started out wanting to deliver devices, we're really moved more into the turnkey model of delivery, and then when we get the very fortunate chance to partner with someone like Ori, where you're really intensifying the process and intensifying the footprint for a client and what they can do in that footprint, it's just really a match made in heaven. It's beautiful.
Indeed, I agree, and I think that that ability to just get more value out of that investment, whether it be a lease or purchase, or being able to drive more value, more doses, more patient treatments through that same square footage, makes a huge amount of difference. We know we've seen. I mean, these are not insignificant sums that people spend on a bricks and mortar facility. These are tens of millions, maybe even $100 million in a facility to do a couple thousand doses, and knowing when you're going to need that capacity, where it should be located, all of those questions are incredibly difficult, if not impossible to answer. So a flexible solution like the one you provide makes a ton of sense for me. And I'd love to hear what you're hearing kind of from the industry. I know you've already have consistently over the last 8 years had relationships with academic centers. I know you do a lot of work with them. But tell us a little bit about your customer base and what you're hearing, and kind of where you think the industry is moving, that positions you guys so well for the next kind of 5 to 10 years.
Well, I would start by highlighting the fact that we've served over 5,500 hospitals in the country in our 60 years. By the way, we just passed our 60th year on Super Bowl Sunday this year. So
Wow, congratulations. Jeez. Kevin, you don't look a day over 59, I'll tell you.
we'll invite you down for the upcoming barbecue, Jason.
That'll be great.
We're gonna do a big bash. So you're definitely invited.
60 years, that's crazy.
Yeah, good stuff, and looking forward to the next 60. So we've served over 5,500 hospitals in just our history overall, from equipment to mobile facilities to modular facilities. But the company has also had a very interesting path in biocontainment. And that has been serving military applications, high level research, BSL-3 ag applications, and those two pieces of knowledge combined together have really allowed us to approach this new era of cell and gene therapies with very specific technologies around containment and around aseptic process that really allow us to bring value forward to the client. And Jason, as you all well know, there are a lot of learnings that happen as you develop things and as you deploy things. And I would never stand here and lie. There have been some hard learnings that have come along with that. And that's what makes companies better. That is what makes technologies evolve, is those learnings. And so yeah, I really think that we've been able to bring a lot of history and developed technology over time to bear at this particular moment in time.
And I think that one of the things that we've done even recently is started to talk to a few patient groups. And the neat thing about that was, at the Facilitate show in particular, that we got some great time to spend with you guys at, is meeting a family where they had to travel long distances for CAR T therapy. it cost the family deeply in trying to achieve that access and travel and other things. And ultimately, the therapy was working for their son. But if it had been in their home state at a healthcare institution where they could have reached it easily, that would have been a whole different game changer for them as a family. And many patients have no access at all as a result of that. So the fact that we've been in so many hospital institutions all over the country, some small, remote, some very large research institutions, that gives us the foundation to know how to deploy these kinds of how this kind of manufacturing capacity in all sorts of places, which ultimately, as a business, we're looking at that patient access piece because I think that's what we're all driving for.
100%. I mean, our mission as a company is to open up widespread patient access to this new generation of therapies. And by being able to bring it closer to the patient, you're just making the bar that much lower for patients to be able to access it. I mean, if you happen to live next to, in Houston, next to MD Anderson, you're incredibly fortunate if you have a health issue of this type. But in many, many places across the US and across the world, that's just not the case. The physical proximity is a barrier. And as we know, costs, throughput, quality are all barriers as well. One of the topics that I wanted to discuss with you guys, and Kelly, you've alluded to it just then, which is really this idea of decentralized manufacturing or bringing manufacturing closer to patients and what that could look like. What's your view on, do you think that's the future of cell and gene therapies? I've bored the listeners of the Ori podcast many times about my views on this topic, but I'd love to hear yours. I think it makes logical sense. We know there's some regulatory hurdles, there's some quality hurdles, and given your background, you have a better view into those than most. But I'm curious, what's your thought on how this might evolve over time?
Well, I think for autologous, it makes the most sense of all, to do or even regional based, some sort of centralized manufacturing model. It just creates inherent risk. And we've seen in some studies that the effectiveness of the therapy itself can be at risk when you're doing a lot of transport and all sorts of things. So when you look at that and you look at the need for access in places where it may not be MD Anderson, but they're hospital institutions that have a lot of capabilities for manufacturing, but they need the infrastructure. I think it's an amazing platform. Now, you alluded to it. There are regulatory challenges when you have disruptive technology. And I think that certainly for clinical phase, which is where we all are pretty much right now, although thankfully more and more of these products are gaining approval every day. But this is where we are now. So as we are working in development or in clinical, this is an incredible platform for that. And we're actually working with with some clients right now on getting through some of those regulatory hurdles. And so far, we've seen great engagement. And I think that, Dr. Peter Marks, and we've seen the same out of Europe, they're very open to this. They understand that if we're going to actually truly open up patient access, they're going to have to think disruptively and look at means for how we can accomplish this in a very safe way, in a GMP environment with all the controls that are necessary. And we understand risk-based thinking and putting in appropriate controls around that. So it's a matter of bringing it all forward with all those pieces covered. So we've captured all the check boxes, and we're actually elevating the capabilities of these research institutions or biopharma companies that need to be able to deliver these therapies at a healthcare institution, for example, in a place of care model.
Yeah, I wanted to just hop in. I think what Carol said, for companies like ours, Jason, who are bringing forward these technologies that are quite disruptive, we need to be ready and willing to step up and deliver the regulatory side and the assistance to our end clients that actually gets them to their finish line. And I'm really, again, I couldn't be more honored to get to work with Carol every day. I mean, she's just one of my favorite people in the world, bar none. But it's that willingness to step beyond, hey, we're just delivering a product or a facility or, a system to develop, point of care delivery, and go deep into the regulatory and make sure that there is truly a solution. And back to mission focus, right? I mean, these are life-saving curative therapies that we're talking about, and there is nobody that's on this particular podcast or probably listening to this podcast who hasn't been touched by poor health to somebody in their family. And I always like for us all to keep that front and center focus as we go forward and make our business decisions and do what we do in life and how we invest our time. So I'd just like to really encourage the entire industry, anybody who's listening, to remember the purpose we serve is great, and it's a great thing to be involved in.
100%. And I think one of the things you touched on that's really important from my perspective is taking what we're calling an ecosystem approach. Partnerships like the one we have with you guys, thinking about chain of logistics or chain of identity. We've got partnerships with Trexel or Venetti. How do we as technology providers or enablers to get, ultimately cell and gene therapy companies are best at developing new therapies. That's their job. That's their USP. They find themselves in the situation where they have to also figure out how are we going to transport these things? How are we going to make them? How do we integrate technologies that were never meant to fit together or work together? How do we create processes that are scalable? There are all of these challenges that we as enabling technology companies can help with ahead of time by just trying to maybe work a little bit harder, work a little bit more collaboratively to say, well, let's try and front run that issue. Let's create a pre-integration that makes it easier. Let's create a paperless manufacturing tech stack that can help if that's what a customer wants. So this is, I think maybe I wasn't in the industry, 10 years ago in this particular focus area. Maybe the technology companies didn't always play well with others. It wasn't our best, what we were best at. But I think these days it's imperative that no one company is going to solve all these problems. No one company is going to fix the vein-to-vein supply chain. So having collaborations like the one we have, working together, trying to front run some of these issues, and being able to make it easier for therapy developers to do what they do best, which is bring new therapies to market. Kevin, as you said, looking at the numbers for even a therapy like Abecma, first in class, multiple myeloma, it's a big indication, over 30,000 patients a year. And in the first year and a bit, they've been able to treat only over 300. Now, that's great for those 300, but it's, a tiny percentage of the potential patients that could benefit. So this is where this idea of trying to remove some of these access barriers, the travel time, the logistics, the associated costs, the complexities around quality and batch release, and there's just so much to run at. I think it's really going to take a team effort for all of us to work together. And I know that you guys are open to collaborations as we are. Come talk to us. If you've got an interesting technology, we'd love to hear about it. Who knows? Maybe there's a way we can work together to try and solve some of these problems.
No, absolutely. Anybody listening, I would appreciate any collaborations where we can take the industry forward, where we can be a player. And Jason, I would reflect a little bit on what you said. I think there probably was a little bit more of a I'll call it a protectionist stance amongst companies 10 years ago. I would have witnessed that in my own career. But I think where we sit on this frontier of truly new curative medicines, I think if we all start with the mindset of, hey, I want to take care of more patients, and if we just start there, and it could be your friend or your loved one, if we start there, it actually makes the collaborations quite natural, and I think you see it with and I'll warn you, I'm a surfer. I think you see it with the vibe at Facilitate, kind of how collaborative everybody is in this space. It's actually a lot of fun. It's a true pleasure to be involved in.
It is. I think it's an evolution from where we've been certainly, and I gave a presentation there speaking to the what I think is the most important metric. It's exactly what you said. How many patients have been successfully treated with these therapies? That's really the only benchmark that matters. Number of clinical trials running, well, that's a nice statistic. Number of products approved, also a nice statistic. But ultimately, if we approve products that we can't make, that aren't affordable, that have to be flown halfway around the world to serve patients, we're not actually moving the needle, and that's a big source of frustration for lots in the industry. Seeing great new approvals are awesome, but we need to be thinking about some of these challenges in advance because every single company we talk to, every single investigator that we talk to, they're all focused on the patient benefit, just like you said. We all want the same thing. But sometimes these kind of perverse incentives get introduced in the system. We got to worry about grant funding or publications, or we've already got this big facility, so don't shouldn't we use that capacity? Well, I'm not 100% sold that centralized manufacturing is the right modality for cell and gene therapy. We haven't seen it work yet. It's being trialed and it's working okay. It's certainly not working great. I think there's just a whole new layer of thinking that needs to be done from those of us in the industry to really solve this problem at scale,
Yeah,
which is a big challenge.
and again, I mean, you touched on this earlier, with the MD Anderson example, but close to the patient matters. I mean, if the best therapy in the world, if you don't have access to it with your particular family, just because of where you happen to be physically located, where's the value?
Yeah, yeah, it's super tough. Well, it's an awesome time for innovation, as you said. I mean, there's a lot of new ideas, new technologies coming to market. One of the questions that we had to discuss with you guys is really around some of the work you're doing. I mean, 5,500 hospitals. I didn't even know there were that many in the country. I'm sure I should have known that. But what's the kind of feedback you're getting from the marketplace? Where are you? If you're able to talk about some of the work you're doing, you don't have to name names if you can, of course. But I'd be keen to understand a little bit more detail, maybe the next layer down about some of the projects you're working on that you think are really moving in the right direction.
I'll take it. So let's just say, as Kevin mentioned, we produce both modular and mobile platforms. And on the modular side, we've been very excited to be working on some projects that will give, more capacity for viral vectors. So that's fantastic. It's really helping that need right now because that is a significant constraint working with some healthcare institutions on a decentralized manufacturing model. Have some clients right now. We're working through some FDA things, just really some great dialogue and engagement. So that's ongoing. And ultimately, the pipeline looks very good this year with a lot of the things that we just talked about. A lot of collaboration. These things don't always happen overnight. It's just as you mentioned, the kind of collaboration across industries, the same kind of collaboration we have with our clients on a day-to-day basis, just really figuring out work streams and things like that. And, some of the biggest hospital institutions we've worked with, Moffitt is one in particular that is near and dear to us. And we've been working with them for a really long time, and there are many others. And I think some of these institutions are going to be leading the pack when it comes to decentralized manufacturing models. And, we'll see probably in the next several months where that falls. But it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, Jason, I wanted to come off of that just a little bit and talk a bit about the approach with clients because I think that's equally important and you'd spoken earlier kind of about the pre-thinking about client problems and how can we solve them before there are real issues that are getting in the way of treating patients.
For sure.
I think that understanding that in this next generation of mobile that we launched January 25th at Facilitate, that we actually thought about unidirectional, bidirectional, 3, 4, 5 room layouts, the ability to tunnel the mobile facilities together, built flexible HVAC and MEP capacity for future need or for specific applications. So there was a lot of pre-thinking that went into that, and it's sometimes anticlimactic to go launch something after it's been your baby and you've been holding it daily for 18 months in your factory trying to get it built out. But I think that the pre-thinking part of this really matters, and coming up with those pre-packaged designs, and that at least gives you a great place to start with your clients when it comes to their operation. You can at least lay something down on the table and go, well, hey, this is how we've thought about your personnel and material flow. Does that work for you? What tweaks could we make? We're doing that with both the mobile platform and with the modular platforms, where we've got 25 standard layouts that we can at least use as a conversation starter, if you will. And so I think that part matters a lot, and it's very similar to the work that we're doing with Ori, where we're looking at the best way to integrate your devices given the needs of the process.
Exactly right. I think, when our team was down visiting you guys in earlier this year, one of the things that we were blown away with is just the kind of the facility, your ability to build flexibly, and facilitate those kinds of, let's call them customizations, but it's sort of within a framework. You've already thought about the framework, and then you allow for flexibility within that framework, which is exactly how we're thinking about the Ori platform. Is that, if you ask me what a CAR T process is going to look like in 2 years' time, I have no clue. It's sort of, we need to kind of try and front run some of those potential kind of opportunities, challenges that customers are going to have. But us spending quality time with your team, thinking through, well, what does the framework need to look like for a turnkey solution? That combines your capabilities and ours, and it has a digital underpinning potentially, and it plugs into the Ori cloud. All those things, we can invest a little bit of time and thought in our experience to try and front run some of the stuff that we know are, maybe even some of our customers don't yet know they're going to need, but we know they might. So it's good to build it in ahead of time.
Well, and it's fascinating to bring people together with slightly different technology backgrounds as well. It was actually my favorite meeting so far this year. So, and just ideate back and forth. Okay, well, clients need this. Why do they need it? What's the best way to implement? It's just those are the funnest parts of my very fun job.
Definitely. And you guys bring in, not only certainly not within cell and gene therapy only, but across life sciences, across biotech, those kinds of, some of the learnings and cross-industry influences into your work in cell and gene therapy. Is there anything specific potentially that you've learned over that 60-year history that you're now thinking more deeply about, or that's particularly relevant to the work you're doing now in the regenerative medicine space? Is there anything you'd highlight for the listeners?
I think that one of the thing that comes to mind, Jason, when you ask that question, is the fact that we've been an equipment provider long before we were a facility provider. Equipment has always been the place where the process happened, and so we've always been very close to the process. Right. And wrapping a bigger facility around a piece of equipment and the process is just a natural extension, and it's I don't know if I'm putting it in great words, but it's a true strategic advantage because of the way that our people think about delivery of a total solution.
I'll give you my spin on that answer, because I think it's exactly right, which is, we've got a lot of biologists on our team, and as a technology company, we say we're biology led. Ultimately, you can have the coolest tech, but if it doesn't grow the cells or it doesn't make the right therapeutic, then you're stuffed. I think your point is, well, it's the technology inside that's really doing the process that people are interacting with. And then when you put an advanced, next piece of technology around that, it still has to work. It still has to deliver the therapeutic, deliver the result, deliver the outcome, the lab result, or whatever it is that you're trying to measure inside. So taking that expertise and leveraging it in a new way makes a ton of sense to me. And, I think what we've seen not go as well potentially in the industry and historically is when you have an engineering-led solution where you're busy trying to jam that square peg into the round hole. It doesn't quite work, but we're going to work as hard to stuff it in there as we can. And it just, unfortunately, it's kind of led us to where we are today, which is, you have processes that aren't really scalable, they aren't really repeatable, they're very expensive, and we need to front run that. We can't really afford. We don't have, I don't think, another 10 years to prove out the commercial case for cell and gene therapy. I mean, I think we've proven the clinical and scientific case. We can cure cancer, we can cure rare diseases, but we just can't do it for a lot of people. We can't make these products widely accessible, and we need to demonstrate that we can do that in order to continue the levels of investment we've seen, the level of focus. I mean, we wouldn't be on this call today talking to each other. We wouldn't be in partnership if we didn't believe that cell and gene therapy really, or advanced therapies, has a really unique opportunity to become, the third pillar of medicine that people say it is. You don't see clinical results very often, like we've seen in this space. Carl June publishing, 10-year cancer-free data, incredible. Like you fall out of your chair kind of stuff. But if it only helps 1% of the patients who it could potentially help, then I think that we've really missed the mark. Unfortunately, it's really, we have bigger ambitions.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it. As leaders, the three of us as leaders, and to the other leaders out there in the industry, affordability and accessibility have got to become front of mind. It has to be. That's part of the accessibility of this. Yes. So making more efficient processes, making more efficient use of capital to deliver those processes. Those have got to be some pillars that start to underpin our missions.
100%. And you said earlier, which I think is probably, hopefully it doesn't get lost in this conversation, which is it requires not only technical innovation, but business model innovation. Moving metal and selling stuff has been the model for quite a long time. But as an industry, it's time to rethink that. Is that the right model to take us forward for the next 10 years or 15 years or 60 years or whatever the number is? I mean, I think, talking about flexible solutions, we don't want necessarily therapy developers that have limited amounts of capital to get clinical data, to get, sort of patients treated, to have to spend huge amounts on facility and equipment. And I think it's speaking to your views on that, which it's quite innovative. I don't think that everyone in the industry is thinking this way yet.
But I think that I think it's forthcoming. I really do. I think that there's a lot of very smart people that we interact with all the time, and I think as the business models evolve, as the technologies evolve, I just want to make sure that we collectively stay on the front end of that wave, if you will.
Yeah, agree. Try and stay on the leading edge. As we're coming to the top of the hour, I'd love to ask you guys just a little bit of your view as we look forward. Sometimes I'm not very consistent with this question. Sometimes I give you like a 3-year time frame. Sometimes I ask you to pull out the crystal ball for a 10-year view. But I'd love to hear your view on the future, short and long term, both for your business, both for Germfree, but also for the industry. What does good look like, and where do you think we'll be in that kind of, let's say, 5 to 10-year horizon?
No, it's certainly a crystal ball. I think one of the things that you say frequently, Jason, is like combining Ori technology plus a platform like ours is really 1 + 1 = 3, because it really does provide an intensification and the ability to access patients and lower the cost of doses, et cetera, beyond what's current thinking today. And I don't see how that's not achievable in the next 2 to 3 years. And, and I think that we shouldn't be driving for anything less than that, because I don't think we have a long time to wait. The therapies that we're talking about are for patients that were generally wildly unsuccessful, that have just very limited amounts of time, and now we have the ability to cure those patients. I don't think we have the long game to play with. I think we have to innovate faster.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the numbers are staggering. 10 million people a year die of cancer, another 10 million people a year diagnosed with cancer. We're a company in a hurry. We want to get out there as fast as possible for that reason. Patients don't have much time to wait. So Love your view, Kevin, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, as I look at it, I think innovating faster matters a lot, and I think platformizing, productizing things matters a lot. And then internally, focusing on a performance culture that can deliver to meet the need. That really matters. Building a team of experts. I mean, we view ourselves as an expert to expert business. And developing those teams, I find it interesting because my view jumps back to, well, what are we doing to train people better, to give better career pathing, to give more opportunity to the team that we have here today, such that we can grow the experts that are the Carol Houtses and the Jeff Searles and the other folks that we have who are just amazing and have tons of industry experience. How do you build that over time? I think that matters a lot. In the 3-year outlook, we're highly focused on a performance culture and making sure that we're able to meet the demand that the industry needs.
I mean, it's a great point just to think about as we close to say we hear a lot about the kind of HR shortage, the shortage of talent in the cell and gene therapy industry. We have a much more demand than we have supply of these highly trained people. And with technology, hopefully we can de-skill some of these things so it doesn't take quite as many highly skilled people, and those people can focus on doing other value-added activities. But how do you think about that sort of talent development? I mean, you've spoken to it internally at Germfree. Obviously, you're looking to develop the team internally, and I don't know about you guys, but it's really, I mean, we live and work in London. Most of us are in the kind of New Jersey, Philadelphia area. There's incredible competition for talent, and trying to find the right people that can add the right value to really this revolutionary project that we're doing is not always easy. So I'm curious, the advice you might give to folks that might not yet be too far in their career path or might be in school even. What kinds of skill sets do you see that are most needed? What kinds of innovation do you see the industry needing as we move forward over the next 3 to 5 years?
No, it's an amazing question because the skill sets for cell and gene therapy are not certainly not off the shelf, from any standard university program. And I think the heart of some of our community colleges is I think where we're going to get some really great workforce, out of those kinds of programs. But it's going to really take the kind of innovation that Ori is driving to make sure that the level of technique of manufacturing these kinds of therapies is simplified. So that's the way we'll be able to scale these therapies. And some of the things that we're trying to do at Germfree is also gain some awareness at the university level. I think getting out there and sharing our stories to inspire students to come into a field like this is very important. They've been in a COVID world for a couple of years now without being able to really look out at what their career potential might be. That just means we need to double down on our story and getting out the messaging of where they have a place in this amazing industry we all serve.
Awesome advice. Kevin, do you have any parting thoughts for the audience you want to close on? Anything we haven't gotten a chance to cover? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the thing that came to mind on that is the fact that the forthcoming generation that's in and entering the workforce now, there's a lot of data that points to the fact that they are a lot more mission and purpose driven, and the space that we work in couldn't serve a much higher purpose. It's keeping people alive, it's curing them, it's taking care of your community and your family, and so I would encourage any young folks to, if there's any questions, get somebody like a Jason Foster or Carol Houts or myself on the line. We'd be glad to talk you through why we enjoy what we do, why we sit here with smiles on our faces as we do this good work.
That's right. Don't go invent the next social media platform. Come work with us in cell therapy and save lives. Come join us on this crazy journey.
I am not
Well,
even taking the bait on that one.
I threw it out there. I'll fall on the sword if I have to, Kevin. No, but thank you both so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation. Great to see you both again, and look forward to hopefully seeing you again soon in three dimensions. It was a pleasure to see you in Miami, and look forward to see you again in the next few months, hopefully.
You too, Jason. Welcome anytime down here, okay?
All right. Thank you both. Bye-bye.